Give the guys, yeah, some technical thing. They weren't following my page, so I couldn't send them a request. The bunga azaadi team. So today's topic, I'm just waiting for them to send me a request now. Today's topic is going to be political science, ideology, think tanks, and stuff like that. So yeah, gotta. It takes time for them to.
Hold on, we're telling you what. How's people doing? It's cold out there today, man. It's raining badly. Just getting them to join. Takes a bit of time on my Insta. Get the people, just getting them to enter the call. Again, today's topic is going to be about political science ideology. I want to get all types of people. I want to get all types of people on my platform, Hannah. All different types, from different backgrounds, from different Sikhi, Vachar, different levels of Sikhi. I'm accepting the request. It just takes time. For some reason, every time I go on live, I have to accept the request so many times before it takes like a minute or two before people can actually get on. Happens all the time. Yeah, Bunga Zadi, Carl, I'm accepting it, but it just takes time, bro. I don't know why. Happens to me every single live. Instagram, the app needs to like sort itself out a bit. They should. Is it coming on your end, bro? Yes, yes.
Sorry, Kasai, today.
Bro.
Yeah, good, bro.
Yeah. So I'm just gonna give an introduction, and then we'll get cracking with the interview. So I was just saying, like, I like to have different types of people on my platform and stuff like that. So what happened is when I done the live with Carl Sanama, a lot of people reach out to me, say, get these guys on. Hana Bongo Zadi, like my mate Cam Samra, he told me, a couple other guys, even the Carl Sanama team said, look, get them on as well. So I was like, I'm late to this Instagram thing. Like, I've not really been on Insta. So like, I've seen one or two of your posts here and there pop up, but I didn't clock that it might have been from someone's personal account, so I didn't clock.
Sure,
So
sure.
then I researched into you guys. I looked at all your posts and thought, yeah, okay. So that's why I named the topic like political science, Sikhi science, ideology, think tank,
Mm.
that because obviously you lot got a lot of ideas, and
Yeah,
that's what the whole talk's going to discuss, some of your ideas. And I've gone through a lot of your posts now, and
right,
I
nice.
agree with, yeah, I've agreed with a lot of your stuff. I'm quite like-minded on some of the
Uh,
stuff. With some of the stuff, I haven't read it all properly, or I don't get it. So this is what I wanted to do in the interview: get the Sangha to get familiar with where you're coming from and how practical is it. Is it just ideology? Because every great movement starts on paper, right?
yeah.
Even if you look at Sikhi, Guru Nanak Dev Ji started the Gurbani, started every guru built up on
Mm.
Sikhi. So Guru Nanak Dev Ji said, "Here's the truth. Don't condemn women. Don't believe in caste." And the next guru put wrestling. The next guru put langar system, Anand Karaj, Akal Takht, Guru Har Gobind. Then the other gurus built on it. Guru Har Rai built zoos and RSPCAs.
Yeah.
All sorts of, yeah, all the gurus built, and Guru Gobind
That's
Singh
it.
Ji got Khalsa, Karpur forward, Guru Granth Sahib, and made the Khalsa. And so it all starts, and you have to stem from somewhere. And every
Exactly.
revolution starts from
Exactly.
somewhere. The Khalsa Raj starts from somewhere. So before we start, but Singh's views are his views, my views are my
Yeah,
views. So don't think that way,
100%.
everyone's, yeah, don't think that it's a collective or whatever, because that's everyone's responsible for their own views,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
So yeah, so we're looking at ideologies, right? So I've come across mad ideologies. I was sent screenshots, yeah. I don't want to name the person or name the thing. I don't want to make it political, but when we get Carlos, the screenshots were in a group and said, when we get Khalistan, we're gonna tear down all the malls in India, kill anyone that works for India government.
All
Yeah.
right. Okay.
So these are some ideas, and these are serious
Yeah,
organizations, by the way. Yeah, Padhe likhe bande uni. Yeah,
yeah.
and I've seen a lot of ideas, and I've seen like a lot of it is just fantasy. It's not gonna happen. There's no like real way that some of these ideas will happen. So there's a lot of
Exactly.
fantasists, but then there's some ideology where we can work towards it or take stepping stones towards it, Anna.
Mm.
So if I was to say like the Khalsa today, for me personally, this is my view, and not Singh's view here, yeah. I would say majority are civilians. Yeah, majority are law-abiding civilians under the governments that they live in, Hannah, across the world.
Sure.
You have few vigilantes here and there that might do stuff. In India, obviously you got the Nihangs that are a bit more reckless and a bit more outlaw, and they live in the Prathan way, and some of them are Chakravarti, and they're a bit hardcore, and they do bits and bobs, and they say we're sovereign, only Guru Gobind Singh is we're free, and they've got no bills. They do live like basically how the Singhs were living in the jungles,
Yeah. Snapshot.
not far off, and they will chop a band up. They might not have an army, or they might not be like paid or whatever, but you know the donations they get, the money they do get, and where they are needed, they are doing vigilantism here and there.
Yeah.
A few stuff that you always hear every 6 months something happens. Some of them, are darkos and do unjust stuff, yeah, and a lot of criminals have entered the Nahang element because they're hiding, or they keep the Sikh troop, they're hiding from a crime or something like that somewhere else, Anna.
Yeah.
So we do have some negative stuff going on, but they're the closest to the Indian Nahangs, are the closer to how probably the Singhs were living in the Mughal Raj, Anna.
Yeah.
But majority of us, we've done well. We've integrated into whatever countries we've gone to. We've got good jobs, good cars, good houses. Not many are breaking the laws. Not many are. We might have write-ups against injustices and stuff like that, but not many are going the extra mile or willing to sacrifice, or they might have not just found a cause that's willing to go jail or die or kill for
Fair
at
point.
the moment. But
Yeah.
we just don't know because everyone's things varies, Hannah.
Yeah.
But we are much tamed from what we are supposed to be, or especially the Amritaris, because even back in the days there was all types of Sikhs, and there was all types of like there was Seva Panthis, there was Nirmele, there was Sejtaris, there was Jassads. Not everyone was Amritari, and amongst the Amritaris you probably had, obviously the Nahangs are the most prevalent, Galpur Ki Forge. But there's also a history saying that they came later. It's so confusing out there, bro. Innit? I'm not that Payalikia, but it's a circus. It's a circus out there. You make a point, bro. Someone's gonna make a point against you. Then they're gonna make a point. They said they're gonna use this source. Then they're gonna use that source. It's like the scientific world in the modern age. Some are for sketching, some are against it. Some are for this diet and that diet, and they're all pulling each other down the ladder. Oh, it's just, bro, geekery, innit? So, I rate you. You've put your ideology out there, and you've come on and you're going to explain to the Sangat, and like my Sangat, we've got a lot of street following, so they need to hear this, and they need to hear what are modern day Sikhs thinking, what are the academics thinking, what are the think tanks, people, the ideology, where do that, because every panth has to start with academic. You got the academics, then you got the generals, then you got the foot soldiers that make it happen. But the academics is the people. I'm not saying you're an academic or you're just on that way, but I'm just saying the idea is where it all starts from. Huh?
Exactly. Yeah.
So
no, it's a good point. I mean, I guess it's in general just to build off that. Like before we had any Raj to begin with, like with Banda Singh Bahadur's republics and the Missile period, and then Maharaja Singh's. Before all of that, you had the prep work that went in, right? And I sort of like pegged that to Guru Gobind Singh Maharaj's Anandpur Darbars, right, where they brought in the world's top talent, political scientists of the time, the theorists, the idea guys, all this kind of stuff. And it's only then that they sort of built an environment in which to craft the mindsets ready to do Raj in the next sort of generation. And I feel like a lot of the kind of like political movements today kind of lack that ideological underpinning to which to guide actions and also then do the right thing relevant for the time. Like even if you look at something like the US, right, and I give this analogy quite often, they didn't just jump to start writing the Constitution, right? There's a lot of work that went in that informed the mindsets of the founding fathers. So you had the works of John Locke, you had the French classical liberals, you had the even ancient Greek philosophers that all went to crafting the mindset the founding fathers had. And then even then, they've had to write the Federalist Papers and the Bill of Rights, all that kind of stuff, all this kind of prep work went in. And then only then, after all of that work, did they write a Constitution. and establish the nation state of the United States, right? And even then, it wasn't perfect, right? Even the founding fathers themselves, that kept slaves, the rights and stuff they had wasn't equally applied to everyone. So there's still inefficiency. So even after all that prep work, you can have imperfections. It just shows that we haven't got any of that prep work going on. There's none of that's happening at the moment. We're very, very behind. So like, yes, you gave the example of like Nahang Singhs and stuff, and I respect Nahang Singhs massively. I probably have a bias towards Nahang Thai in general.
Fair play.
Yeah, but it's but at the same time, we've got to be realistic with what's going on. Like, they are just sort of like a snapshot of history, and it's important to have that, right? It's important to have that where you can sort of see, oh, is that how it used to be, like, kind of thing. But I think there's a very big and missing element that we have to start innovating as a Panth as well, right? If we're going to claim to be a Kalapurki Forge, then we should have the modern training as well as the traditional Purathan mindsets. It should be an amalgamation of the best of both worlds kind of thing, but we lack that massively. So a lot of this kind of like thinking and it kind of informed the motivation of setting up the bunga and doing the azaadism project in general. It's about looking at the legacy of the Anandpur Darbar and seeing, okay, well, there's a Sikh intelligentsia of the time that went on to inform the mindsets of the Mahan Singhs that set up the first Raj. And now we've lost that Sikh intelligentsia over the last century. And then no wonder why we're not succeeding at Raj, because we've lost that Sikh intelligentsia level in which to guide our political movements. So essentially what this bunga is trying to do is our sort of part at trying to revive the Sikh intelligentsia and create that kind of groundwork so the next generation that comes along, they have actually solid basis in which to do political movement that actually achieves results rather than the kind of victim narrative we just see recycled over and over again today.
Oh yeah, bro, I've seen it. I've been in the Panth, 25 years. Hyde Park every year, spend 10 grand, do the morje, Shah Khalistan, and go home and eat a samosa, go sleep, wake up, repeat next year. And just more samosa next year and a bit fatter belly. Nothing's achieved yet. So if I get a lot of inspiration from the Jewish community. They had the Holocaust. They set pace without firing many bullets, man. They look where they are now. Look, I used to live near Hackney, so they have their own, I think Islington, they have their own, like, they got all these block of flats and they all live there, segregated, but they look out for each other. I don't know too much about the ins and outs, but there's no Holocaust coming. They've got it on lock now. They've made sure they defend their people. They had an ideology, they put it, implanted it, and look where they are today. So you mentioned the word azaadism, so that goes to my first question. So what is azaadism? What does it mean to you? And I've never really heard of this phrase before, bro, to be honest.
Yeah, definitely. It's because it's a phrase I made up.
Okay.
It's not a legit term, right? Well, I'm trying to make it a legit term, but essentially it's my attempt at trying to form a political economic philosophy based off of Sikhi and also modern kind of like research into economics to make a relevant framework in which we can start crafting constitutions, manifestos, white papers, etc., like basically statecraft documents. But before you essentially go towards those documents about, okay, how do you set up a constitution, etc., you should have like a guiding principle in which you're forming these things based upon. You can't really do what I've sort of seen people do, is trying to find middle ground with everything and just trying to have like a hodgepodge of ideas and just putting it together, because it becomes unprincipled. And then when you translate that into practice, into policy, it ends up being extremely wonky, and you have lots of inefficiencies, which then leads on to suffering. So you should have some principles standing when it comes to like politics and statecraft. And what Azaadism tries to do is offer a set of guiding principles which to do this. Obviously influenced by Sikhi and the Khalsa ethos, as well as modern research in economics. So Azaadism is a kind of like alternative to like socialism or communism or capitalism. It's my navigation of economic schools of thought using Gurbani at the heart of the sort of measuring stick. So as I was going through it, my sort of research, watching the lectures, reading the books, papers, etc., right, I was constantly assessing everything to my then understanding of Sikhi. And then me encapsulating all those ideas into a kind of document, I ended up forming it as an ideology, and I called that ideology Azaadism. So Azaadism, literally kind of like in English, would be like freedomism. So it's the philosophy of freedom as applied to politics and economics. Because I believe the Khalsa should fundamentally be trying to strive towards a concept of azaadi, of freedom. So it's very important to understand what freedom actually is and what it isn't. because I feel like a lot of people in the band don't actually appreciate what true freedom is, what they seem to be doing. And you see this a lot with the neo-Khalistanis, is that they're trying to basically make a Sikhi-themed version of what we already have. There's not actually a fundamental reshift of any nation-state model. It's just a rebranding, but you have the same kind of structures of Gulami. You have the same tax structure. You've got central banking, all this kind of stuff. So it's not really a big change. It's also why I don't like the word revolution much, because what does revolution really mean? It means a revolving of the wheel. But really, as the Khalsa, we should be trying to destroy the wheel, break the wheel, right? Liberate. We should be doing liberations, right? It's a very different kind of optics with that, rather than just sort of like, oh yeah, let's put people of bunga and daria in charge and things will be fine. Yeah, so this is kind of an alternative to that kind of mode of thinking. So yeah, in a nutshell, Azadism is a political economic ideology that prioritizes liberty and freedom as applied to politics and economics, and tries to place the Khalsa, organizes a decentralized missile system as a way to govern such a system.
So yeah, so when I picked from the answers that you gave, I picked up two key points that I'd want to address.
Yeah.
Is this constitution, is it worldwide? Is it where would it be based? Are you targeting India, Punjabis, and do you know, are you against democracy or?
Yeah, good question. Yeah, so the first part of that question is, so I classify everything into a theory question or a implementation question. So what you've just asked now is an implementation question, but there's little point to have those implementation questions in public unless we have enough of us agreeing in public on the theory on where we're headed. So we do these conversations in private behind the scenes, and we are progressing things as well via our own grand strategy that we formed over the last year, and how to exactly implement some of this into practice. But we have to start like having this baseline kind of understanding of where are we headed. So another analogy I usually give to people is about if you ever want to get somewhere, you need a couple of things, right? You need to know where you're going in detail, not just a vague notion of it. So if I wanted to go to, I don't know, like Shepherd's Bush Gurdwara in London, I can't just put London in my maps app. I've got to give a specific address. Otherwise, I'm going to get to London and get lost, right? And I also got to know where I'm starting from, like what are the factors that got me where I am right now, right? So you have the starting point and the end point, and only then can you start calculating the route, right? So what we're trying to do publicly with the Azadism and the Bunga Azaadi project is at least try to define in detail what is that end goal, that end destination like. So when we know where we're going, then we can start forming the strategies of how to get there and the different options you can take. I think a big problem at the moment in the band is that not enough of us are either know what the destination is in detail or not willing to have the conversation about it as well, which I found the hard way as well, trying to bang my head against the wall with some of these guys. But it's like, if you're not willing to define your destination in detail, then don't be surprised you're not getting there, sort of thing. You can't calculate a route. What you're doing is not working. So that's the kind of first part of the question. And the second one was you asked about democracy. So in the Azadist manifesto, which kind of details the philosophy of Azadism in detail, section 5 of it goes into like democracy and how my sort of views on it are. And I'm generally against the idea of democracy, specifically direct democracy, where you give everyone an equal vote. I don't believe everyone's equally qualified to have a vote, right? Simply by being born, right? I think voting should be earned. It should be a skill that you hone, right? It shouldn't just be given to anybody. But even that doesn't really solve the fundamental issue with direct democracy. The issue is, right, you still have a centralized political will. You have a system in which the majority can decide something that affects the whole population. So essentially, it's just a kind of sophisticated way of saying mob rule, which I'm fundamentally against. I don't think your fundamental base rights as a human being should be overturned by what the majority wants. So like you might see like those common examples of like the people who have like a house over like someone wants to build like a highway or something, right? And the guy doesn't want to move out his house. Like just because they're in the majority does not mean that guy's house should be demolished to serve the majority's will. He still has his own fundamental rights that has to be catered for as a society. But in a direct democracy model, what would happen is the majority is always right. So as Sikhs, considering that we're a minority community, it's paradoxical for us to prefer any system that prefers majoritarianism, given that we're in the minority. It just doesn't make sense from our point of view strategically. There's other ways I think are better, and there's ways to improve democracy, which is what the founding fathers of the US tried to do, because they also recognize the pitfalls of democracy. In fact, you had the philosopher Socrates talk about the dangers of this direct democracy model, like over 2,000 years ago, right? And then it just goes to show, like, we Sikhs are so behind, we're not even realizing that there's already been 2,000-year-old critiques of a democracy, and yet we're still begging for democracy. But the founding fathers of the US, they were also anti this direct democracy idea, hence why they implemented something called a republic, in which it's a bit different. So you have a constitution which assures some rights of the citizenry, that if there are votes, if there are representation in your sort of nation, they can't vote out these fundamental rights, right? So like the right to bear arms, the right to freedom of speech, these kind of things. So they're fundamental, and then everything else can maybe be voted on or whatever. But those things are fundamental. You can't put them up for a vote, sort of thing, which is an improvement to democracy. I think a further improvement would be having actual tests people can take that actually prove competency to vote. Because I think too many people are sort of voting based on emotion rather than rational understanding of what the policies actually are. I remember there was like a study done during the Brexit vote, and the most Google thing after the election was, "What is Brexit?" It's like that's how uninformed people were about what the vote even was, right? So yeah, we're letting incompetent, kind of like stupid people decide on our behalf, and I think that's kind of wrong. So that's why I'm sort of against democracy.
No, yeah, bro, I've been in jail for weapons charges
Oh,
quite a
really?
lot. Like, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. So what I'm saying is, but I didn't rob nobody. I didn't stick nobody up. I didn't rape nobody. I didn't, you know what I mean, kidnap anybody. It's just for self-defense. You know what I mean? So it's like, I get it. Majority says you're not allowed to carry a
yeah,
knife. But
yeah,
in reality, in practicality, the people that are getting stabbed and killed, if they had something on them, they might not get stabbed or killed, or they have a better chance of surviving.
mm,
So just because the majority says you're not allowed to carry a weapon, which is a God-given right to defend your life,
yeah,
and self-defense is a right. It's like, bro, if you defend yourself with a knife and someone else has got a knife, or there's 8, 9 guys and you knife 2, 3 of them, the newspapers gonna be like, bad guy, knife rolled in thug, this
yeah,
and that.
yeah.
But really, bro, you've just defended yourself from, like, you
Exactly,
know,
exactly.
yeah. So
Mm,
I get that you know what the majority you think is not exactly always the truth. So
exactly.
democracy can get it wrong,
Yeah,
and sometimes there's bad. That's just one angle I'm giving you. The UK laws on self-defense. Well, sometimes, bro, you know, if a burglar comes into your house, they say reasonable force. Bro,
mm,
it's you or them. What's reasonable is they're dead and your family's safe.
yeah,
You know?
yeah,
You're
yeah.
not
No, I
gonna
agree. I
when
fully agree.
someone's coming into your house. You're not gonna
Yeah,
calculate. Let me just hit him there and
yeah,
think,
yeah,
oh, if I don't hit that main artery, that's
yeah. Because it's easy
there's
after.
no.
It's
Yeah,
easy afterwards to
so,
kind of judge it and, oh, you should have done this, you should have done that. When you're in the actual situation, no, it's life or sort of death, right? You
bro,
can't like do these
yeah,
games
that's
then.
what I'm saying. Democracy
Yeah,
laws out the window, but
yeah,
just save your life and save your family. That's what bartered the jail, the court cases, man.
yeah,
Jail's
yeah,
better than bloody being in the ground, or you know, so much of these crimes. You know, they come into your house, they sexually abuse and rape and all. There's, I read it all the
yeah,
time, and I've got free
yeah.
time. I check out the news all the time, and that I'm
Fair
trying to
enough.
stay away from it because it's negative.
Yeah,
But
yeah, yeah, yeah,
so we
yeah.
have a
That's
question
another thing, I guess,
here.
as well. Like with social media and stuff, like all the like Gandhi society comes to the top. That's what we
Nah,
get.
nah, bro.
Yeah,
Like a question by Jasper Sidhu. If there is an ideal state in the world at the moment, which one is closest to your vision of Azadism?
yeah, yeah. This is a really good question, actually, and
Mm.
I think in the manifesto I label a couple of them as well. So what I use is something called the Economic Freedom Index. Oh no, Index of Economic Freedom by the Heritage Foundation, and it's a yearly. I think they do it every year, but they rank all the countries in the world in terms of 12 different factors, and it's generally trying to predict which countries are the most economically free. Things like business freedom, the how much corruption does it have, political freedom, that kind of stuff. There's various factors that goes into it. At the top of those lists would probably be the nations that are the most Azadist
Mm.
in practice. So these countries would be things like Switzerland. It might be some
Yeah.
of the Nordic countries too. South Korea, although recently that's probably gone down in the rankings. New Zealand used to be quite high, and
Mm.
Ireland as well. America, UK, that's actually not as high as you'd think it is, but they are relatively economically free. Hence why a lot of the world is trying to move into those countries away from the
Mm.
economically unfree countries. But yeah, I think the one that I'd probably prefer most is Switzerland at this point in time that I've looked
Yeah,
into. That's
I'd
the kind
agree
of
with that as well.
yeah,
I'd agree with
like
that.
gun laws are
Mm.
brilliant. Their banking systems, all that kind of stuff, tax, everything is they're doing it very, very well. The country, it's very, very economically free, very secure, a minimal government, that kind of thing. It's a very good example of what would happen if a country starts to trend towards more of the principles being talked about in Azadism.
No, excellent. So, bro, I've heard of Khalistan, Hannah, but when I was reading the literature, I saw Stanistan, the
Oh yeah,
Stanistan bro. Get into that, man. What is that, bro?
yeah. Yeah, so Afghanistan
Yeah,
is a more of an experimental idea that if you take Azadism to its limits in the long term, it's not. I don't think you'd invent anything like that overnight,
yeah.
but it's kind of something that I set in the long term, so that any policy planning we do, we gradually try to aim towards a society like that. So the Afghanistan model is basically trying to reconcile that the fact that as a human race, we have a lot of diversity, and what
Mm,
one system might work for one population may not work for another population of people, right? And even within a population, we have a lot of diversity. So we're going to do some of these Carlstar workshops
mm,
soon, hopefully in person as well. And as part of those workshops, I'm going to ask Sangha to attend to try and basically split up into teams and come up with your kind of idea of what would an ideal Carlstar Raj sort of look like. And what's going to happen is, and we're doing this already, is there's going to be a massive diversity, even amongst the small population I'm going to test out with, in how this Carlstar Raj would actually work.
mm,
Um, and what we're going to expect, because we are programmed to think democratically, is that we're going to have to compromise and find like middle grounds with everybody. But that's not really going to work because,
nah,
especially with some things like, okay, like death penalty, do we have it or don't we have it, right? Or taxes, should we have taxes or not have taxes? Like some things you have that is a yes or a sort of no, or you have to find some kind of weird middle ground. And in reality, when you have these weird middle grounds, that's when you have all these loopholes coming out and these kind of people come in and exploit the system, that kind of thing. Because you're not principled either one way or the other way. You're just trying to please everyone, and then if the process you please no one. So what Stanistan tries to do is resolve this by essentially saying, instead of having one system, let's have a system of systems in which people who have an idea, let's say it's a bunch of communists, they believe Marxism is best, or maybe a bunch of guys who believe the Prem Samarak style monarchy system is best. All they need to do is find like minds, pool funds, pool resources, get a bit of land, and then actually try it. And then they have their own little city state essentially, or town state. The same thing our gurus used to do. They used to get some land, they used to establish a town state or a city state, and that used to grow if it was successful, sort of thing, right? And then the next guru would then go and do the same thing in another region.
100%.
It's that kind of culture we want to try and replicate again, where we're actually experimenting with many, many, many different types of models of statecraft. So I might have a certain way I think, okay, a society should run in this specific way, whereas somebody over there might say, no, I disagree with that. I believe it should be run this way. But instead of us basically trying to go to war with each other and fighting over the same bit of land, what we do instead is, okay, I'll pick this part, you pick that part, and you try it your way, I try it my way, and we'll check back in 10 years and see which society is more prosperous. Um, and another thing as well, you might not want to have the same success metrics. So, for example, somebody might not want to have a highly prosperous city state that produces lots of profit, that attracts lots of business, that kind of thing. Some people might just want to like a retirement village type thing, right? Or a stan or a city state based on entertainment, or one based on education, like a campus town. So what Afghanistan tries to do is give the kind of city building kind of statecrafty element over to the people directly to start forming communities of their own based on their own sort of like needs and desires and wants, etc. Right? And then over time, what would happen is people would migrate to the regions that produce the best quality of life. And those systems, let's say like a Sharia type system, is very repressive. That's not going to get a lot of people wanted to join that because it's not be very prosperous, not very standard of high standard of living, etc. And I'm saying that as somebody who has a bias, like I don't think that's going to work. But then the beauty of Stanistan is that, okay, a bunch of Muslims might say, oh no, I disagree, Sharia system is going to be the best kind of system, right?
Mm,
The beauty of Stanistan is, okay, well, you go try it then, right? I ain't going to stop you. You go over there, try it. But everyone in your stan has to be participating voluntarily. And there has to be a freedom of exit. So if anyone wants to leave your stan at any time, they should have the freedom to do so. And another thing is that one stan can't negatively harm another stan without their consent. So, for example, one stan can't be set up and it starts pumping out toxic chemicals and it affects all the surrounding stans. that would be a violation of something called the non-aggression principle. The non-aggression principle is essentially the idea that you have the freedom to live however you want to live, provided you do not impede the right for others to do the same. So obviously him pumping out toxic chemicals or dumping toxic waste in a river, that's going to poison the Stan down the road and all the farmers' crops, etc. And he doesn't consent to that. And this is where the central government or whatever sort of system we decide comes in to arbitrate disputes based on this manner. So when a Stan starts to affect another Stan, that's when I believe the Khalsa should be coming in to start arbitrating those disputes, preferably non-violently, but in cases where if one Stan wants to resist, then the Khalsa should be competent enough as a actual military force to put an end to bad actors and bad Stans, essentially. So essentially, the Stanistan is a self-regulating system which you have many, many systems rather than just one system applied to everybody arbitrarily. But again, it's a bit experimental. It requires, I guess, some appreciation of the concepts talked about in economics and the Azaad's manifesto. So things like you have to appreciate the way monopolies form, because some of the common criticisms are, won't there just be one massive Stan? Essentially what we have today. And it's like, with the absence of a central authority at the top, there's no one really to lobby or pander to in which to give you unfair advantages in this marketplace of governance, which is what we see with big corporations today. When a company gets to a certain size, what tends to happen is it starts becoming quite inefficient because it gets quite difficult to centrally plan everything. But instead of sort of like downsizing or getting more bespoke, whatever, what they do is they go to government and they start buying out the politicians and getting themselves like tax breaks or special benefits, regulations, licenses, etc. that they can pass. It's easy for them because they're big and large and established. But new entrants, new entrepreneurs, smaller businesses find it harder to compete with. So they basically filter out their competition. So it's that kind of like stuff you have to appreciate to then to appreciate how the Stanistan would actually work in reality. But again, it is a long-term experimental model, and I am working on a kind of sequel to the manifesto at the moment, which will detail it in a lot more detail, also with the missile system as well, which would clarify it a lot. But yeah, that's in a nutshell what it sort of is.
Yeah, so basically, from what I get from that is that the Khalsa has to have Raj first, so they can kind of police everything as well. And
Yeah.
we're kind of far off that, because that brings me to my next point, the Khalistan. So, in theory, Khalistan, Sikh homeland, Sikh army, like the UN, go across, do stuff. It sounds fantastic, yeah.
Yeah.
But it's like, when I think about it properly, right? 40% of Punjab's Hindus, yeah, they might not want to live under it.
Yeah.
So it's not like there can't be a choice factor. You got to do it like the old school, take over and just be in charge, yeah.
Yeah.
And it's got to be Sikhs themselves. A lot of them ain't Khalistani or don't want a homeland. A lot of Sikhs are split into Radhaswami, Ravidasi, Nirankari. Loads of, I can go on for about 2 days about how many fractions there are in our community, Jat Path, all sorts of fractions, yeah. Then we've got whether this Khalistan will set up the border, the import export, Sikhs in the UP, Delhi, Haryana, would it take armed struggle? The SGPC, they're protected by Indian law. So there's a lot of technicalities. In theory, everything's good, but practical, man, it's like, woo.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And if you look at the movement that just happened in the 80s, it started off political, then the Sikhs demanded the homeland, some Sikhs, not many. And then there was a lot of savagery, bro. If people don't really, if you look into it and you're a historian and you look into it, things are murdering barber shops, off licenses, it's like, is that the sort of rule we want, and that's why I think the Guru didn't do Kirpa, and it was a bloodbath, and it was a lot of savage energy as well.
Yeah.
Probably more than we talk about and more than people are willing to admit, because one thing Sikhs are crap at is admitting where they've gone wrong. They, we're cover-ups. Loads of cover-ups in even today, sexual abuse and Gurdwara, cover-ups everywhere. We, it's the Punjabi nature. If you're just say for example, your Kuri's a wrong and she's done it. When the betrothal come to marry, it's a both baby Kuriya. It's a fourth step wrong and kita. Both baby, but they know what she's been up to, or vice versa. If your son's a heroin addict and you take them to India to get married, it's a both of the factory which काम करता बहुत भी बम कभी नहीं drug
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? We just want to, so it's just this crazy mentality. Massive.
yeah,
So what's your views on Khalistan and stuff and Khalsa Raj, Smartism? Get into it, man. Let
yeah.
us know.
For sure. So with Khalistan, I've always been like generally vague in the sort of official position I take on it. And I guess the reason is because it's not a defined concept. It's not well enough defined. It's not. It's not like a. It's not like something we have a solid plan for. And okay, this is exactly how it would work, and this is where it would be, etc., etc. So when someone says, "Are you for or against Khalistan?" My sort of response is like, "What exactly is Khalistan? The Khalistan you're suggesting here, right?" Because I have a certain idea of how I would like a nation state to run as per the azaadist model. But I don't agree with a lot of what the rhetoric some of these modern day neo-Khalistanis are coming out with that are bordering on like the kind of rhetoric of like Stalin and Lenin and Marx and Nehru even as well, right? Like I wouldn't want to live in a Khalistan run by those guys, right? So it's like I can't just blanketly say yeah, I agree with Khalistan or I disagree with Khalistan. It's like well, what exactly is the Khalistan you're defining? And I think another thing as well is to it's a very important point. I think this is, and I don't think I appreciated how important this was maybe till later on.
Mm,
Maybe even this year I started to appreciate it even more. But there is a very firm distinction between Khalsa Raj and Khalistan, and
mm,
I know a lot of the Khalistanis like to equate the two, but I think that's a grave mistake. To
mm,
make, and I'm glad some of the Khalistanis who are kind of a bit more clocked on, they do appreciate there is a distinction
mm,
because what's happened is right before the European sort of came into India, there was a very different kind of world order that was present at the time, right? It's an empire world order model, where you had like monarchies and you had like empires expanding. Everyone was doing imperialism sort of thing, right? Mughals or that kind of thing, and then it would be very uncommon for the rulers of the society to be representative of the population, right? Like nowadays, you couldn't imagine our prime minister and stuff being from like a Russia or something like that, like a Russians coming in, a Russian family. It would be like a massive scandal sort of thing, right? But that was the kind of like norm in the empire world model. Like the Mughals came from obviously the further from the west into India kind of thing. They were a foreign dynasty. Whereas today, after the British sort of came in, they reformatted the way the world works into something called the nation state world order, or the new world order, right? And this is basically a system in which you have something called nationalism, which is very new historically, and it's the idea that you form communities based on some shared characteristics like language, ethnicity, race, these kind of things, right? Whereas before, it didn't actually matter the composition of the people being governed. Again, the Mughals could be a different religion to the rest of India, kind of thing, or a different kind of even race, whatever, right? But whereas now it's like it's very important for the government of the nation to be representative of the actual people. So you have this system of representative politics, and that really changed a lot of things. And this period is where you start seeing not only the European countries form new nation states based on nationalism. So you have Germany for the Germans, France for the French, this kind of stuff, right? But then after some of these European colonial kind of projects abroad, they start to dismantle. You have a lot of the Western educated natives of those regions starting to demand nationalism for their own people. So for the Indians, well, this is where the word Indians start becoming like a actual national identity. This is when that becomes formed, when the Jewish start having their version of a Jewish nationalism called Zionism. So all these kind of nationalist movements start popping up around the world. So everyone's trying to race to start creating their own sort of countries, nation states. And then we Sikh also toyed with the idea, obviously like before 1947, that kind of period, with like Sikhistan, this kind of thing, but more so as a kind of like strategic play to try and prevent Jinnah trying to get Pakistan, that kind of thing. It wasn't really a serious demand as far as I could tell. It was only later on, after sort of a lot of the promises made by the Indian nationalists kind of fell flat, because the way India has to work, way nationalism works in general, is that you have to start reducing the diversity in your society. You've got to start homogenizing the population, make them all the sort of same, and adhere to the same kind of like national myth. Or like you're not a this community, you're not a that community, you're an Indian now, or you're a British person now, you're a French person now, right? So a lot of the kind of like local diversity gets sidelined. Religion has to be reformatted to fit the nationalistic ideal, etc. Which is what the in my opinion, I think what the SGPC and not SGPC, the Singh Sabha kind of movements were trying to do, they're trying to reformat Sikhi in a way that was compliant to this new nation state world order model. And this is where I sort of say Sikhi becomes Sikhism as well at that point, where it has defined boundaries, there's a defined community, rather than this loose sort of like culture. It's now a religion as per Western standards. And it's strategic to do that because if we didn't do that, then we wouldn't get represented in politics, right? So no one would actually care who the hell the Sikhs or who are representing the Sikhs in parliaments and in government, that sort of thing. So we had to do it, but it's more of a necessity. But over like a couple of like decades of us kind of like living under this new kind of nation state world order model, the new generations come along, they start taking it for granted that this is the way the world works. And so later on in the last century, you start getting obviously nationalism, the way it plays out, you have to oppress the local diversity. So when the Sikhs started feeling the pressure of that suppression, you have like various kind of like Sikh movements coming out, like the Salis with Khalistan, and that becomes their kind of like Sikh version of nationalism, which again, I have to stress the importance of this because Sikh nationalism is a new concept, it's a foreign concept to us. It doesn't invalidate it, it's fine. But so long as we understand where it comes from, the same way like you ever see some of these like anti-Israeli Jews, it's basically the basis of why they're anti-Israel. It's because they recognize Zionism as a colonial project. It's sort of like foreign to their kind of like thousands of year old heritage. And it's a similar thing for us Sikhs as well. Like we're taking for granted now that Khalistan it is indeed a new idea to us that was basically molded into our mindsets by the new nation state world order model implemented by the British, by the colonial powers. If it wasn't for them, we wouldn't really have this demand for Khalistan. We'd stick with the demand for Khalsa Raj. Now, Khalsa Raj is different because that is coming out of a empire world order model. So when I read about Khalsa Raj and that kind of stuff, like from pre-colonial sources, it's a kind of model where you're not trying to establish a nation state, you're trying to establish an empire, you're trying to expand out, you're trying to take Khorasan, you're going to try to take Rome, all this kind of stuff. It's very expansive, right? That's the kind of mindset with Khalsa Raj is. So it's a very different kind of like psyche, whereas nation state Khalistan kind of thing is very more like limiting, or we're trying to define borders, we're trying to get ourselves a sovereign territory. And whereas Khalsa Raj is more like, now we're trying to expand territory, trying to go outwards as far as we possibly can, sort of thing. And I think that contributes a lot to the why the Sikh kind of mindset is the way it's so restrictive, because we're so like insular as a one, we're so inward looking and so like obsessed with ourselves. Rather, if we had like a kind of Khalsa Raj kind of mindset, would be more outward facing, more kind of like out there type sort of thing. But I guess like circumstance and stuff has kind of forced us to go more outwards of Punjab, that sort of thing. Like even Punjab centrism, I think, is a bit of a mistake as well, that we seek to sort of like fall into this trap to really eulogize Punjab. Like, yes, it has some significance for us historically, 100%. But like when you read like passages from Pant Prakash where Guru Gobind Singh Maharaj is saying to the Singhs, okay, what territory do you guys want? Like, here, take the southern lands, right? They're like, no, we want Punjab, right? You guys, what do you want Punjab for? It's like, it's inferior, like, hit the superior southern regions, go west, go east, go north, right? I'll go be anywhere. They're like, no, we just want Punjab. And he goes, if you stay in Punjab, you're going to end up fighting with each other. And that's exactly what happened afterwards as well. It's like Maharaj is telling us, and Maharaj is encouraging us to think big, have massive ambitions, and take the world sort of thing. But we're so focused on Punjab and just Punjab centrism, and I think it's extremely limiting in the way we think. And even like now, we the diaspora in the West, a lot of our political movement, a lot of our political kind of like focus is still on Punjab, whereas really we should be thinking about, okay, well, how do I improve the societies I'm living in right now? What ways can I influence the system I'm in right now? How can I gear this to make it more Azad, make it more like Khalsa Raj here? Like we should start treating our Gurdwara, especially our Sikh spaces, as like forward operating bases, essentially, right? And these are our like foreign bases in different countries to start spreading Sikhi here. But again, we're so insular as a community, we just keep thinking about Punjab over and over again. And again, it's fine, we should think about Punjab, but it shouldn't be the sole focus of our kind of like political ambition. Like I made an argument a couple of weeks ago about why we should, as a Khalsa, consider Iran as a kind of Khalsa colonial mission. Like we should be taking Iran. Like, how do we take Iran? Like forming plans to take Iran, because like especially the Khalsa, because we're the culmination of both Indo and Persian culture coming together, sort of thing. So like we have just as much of a right to Iran than we do to India. But again, people sort of like are very kind of like, oh, what do you mean Iran? It's so outside their kind of purview that they're not even considering things like that because they're so focused on Punjab. But yeah, I'll probably stop there.
No, no. So the thing is, yeah, two things, yeah. Neo-Khalistan I need to know what that is,
Oh
and the
yeah,
other thing is, so Khalsa Raj, like we can't oppress because if you go and invade people, I'm
yeah,
sure back in the day it would have been a justified reason to topple that government and give the people freedom.
yeah,
If a government, like just say right now, just imagine we had Khalsa Raj, yeah, we're operating here from Birmingham, yeah. Obviously, it's fantasy, but we can't take the Burger Bar boys on at the moment. Yeah, they got more firepower than all the
yeah,
Sims, yeah.
yeah,
But just imagine we had it in Birmingham. I said to you, let's go to Switzerland, let's take it over.
yeah,
And they're happy. The people are happy. We can't do that because
yeah,
that's Julim. So
yeah, yeah, yeah.
so would you?
Yeah, you're 100% right. I mean,
Yeah,
this is where the Bajaj needs to be,
yeah,
because like, how do we colonize a region without oppressing them? And this is what I think the British were kind of trying to do in the beginning, sort of thing. But obviously, because of the way the kind of like governments and stuff are structured, the bad actors come to the top and they kind of hijack things and take over. It's really critical what we should have our internal Banthic kind of like processes solid, so we can prevent oppression on a large scale. But I do think there are ways to colonize regions. I know we as a Bant have a very like negative reaction to the word colonize, but colonizing, I sort of like mean it in a way like, how do we invade a region? How do we take over a region and actually make the region more prosperous for the people that live there? So, for example, Iran again is a good example because the people are already now protesting in droves against a
yeah,
tyrannical theocratic government there, right? So there's already an opportunity. So the government, in any case, right, in any place in the world, the government is always the oppressing party by virtue of being a government. Because all a government is, as per the Azaadi's definition, is a taxing authority. If you tax somebody, tax is fundamentally you're putting a gun to someone's head and you're taking their money by force or the threat of force, right? That's what tax is, right? There's no debate whether tax is theft or not. Tax is theft. The debate is, okay, how much do we tolerate? So again, with Iran, right? So we already know the government there are people aren't a fan of it. So the way you do something like that is that you'd actually make the connections and the alliances with the people directly, right? You'll finance certain types of groups, you'll provide the prosperity, you trade with them, you offer education, you give them manifestos. Like this, how Khomeini went into charge in the first place, right? He produced pamphlets and he started spreading his propaganda throughout Iran, and that sort of radicalized everyone to do the Islamic Revolution sort of thing. And now, like I was watching and I added this clip in the article I wrote on this. Um, the one of the theocrats, the government kind of clerics, they were saying, oh yeah, the youth are all protesting and stuff, but what manifesto do they have, right? Like what alternative are they suggesting? They're just protesting. The same thing that we do as a Panth, right? We protest, we say, oh, Mara, that's that, we don't like India, we don't like this, right? But what alternative are we proposing as a result, right? And that's what I'm saying, like, okay, well, something like Azadism, the Azadist manifesto, let's translate that into Farsi, into Persian, and let's disseminate it amongst the Persian elites and the people in Persia who wants regime change. Like, that should be us. That should be a Khalsa intelligence agency sort of mission. But again, we're far off stuff like that because we're far too incompetent as a band at the moment. We really got to get our own processes sorted out. And then we can start thinking about taking on some of these kind of projects. It's not probably a task for our generation, but it's probably a task for the next generation or the generation afterwards. But what we can do now is at least embed the mindsets, right? Start inseminating that type of thinking, do the groundwork so that the next generation that come, to have all this kind of like knowledge base, all this kind of stuff archived for them to build off, to have that political education. Like things again, like with Alexander the Great, for instance, right? Like he was taught by, I believe, Socrates, the Greek philosopher. So that's top level, like historic philosophers teaching the next generation of the dynasty. And then that's what kind of cultivates the mindset to go on to do greatness. Like whether Alexander was great is obviously debatable, but like, it's that kind of level of thinking we need to have as a band. Like, how do we then create the environment for the next generation? Because our generation now, given how behind we are in things, there's very little we can actually do in that kind of space. But what we can do is set the right foundations, and that's what I think we should be focusing on a lot, rather than just doing mindless protests and begging outside of Parliament's barrage.
So yeah, so with the taxes thing, I know my thing is, well, everyone wants to come to Britain, yeah.
Yeah.
So Britain is when you pay taxes, look, free schooling, free hospital. Oh, obviously the system's failing now because it's overcrowded. But you know, like 30 years ago, bro,
Yeah.
the hospitals were good, schooling was good, the school dinners were like amazing, better than most mums cooking sometimes.
Well, fair enough. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then we've got the hospital treatments, we've got, I mean, so much services, disability benefits. In India, bro, if I was disabled in India, I'd have to be begging, bro.
Right.
I'm disabled here. I'm getting social income. We do provide, housing for people that are homeless. So I think even if it's Castle Raj, did they have tax back in the day? How can a country work without tax, bro? Because
Yeah.
there's people that can't work. So I get it when it's unjustly taxed, or some people paying 40,
Yeah.
50% tax. But I think, like, for me, if I had a country, say 20 or 17 or 15% tax for the people that are working, and that money goes collectively. It's like the Swan,
Yeah.
innit? So that's my view. That's my view on that.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so this is a really good point because I think
Mm,
tax is an extremely important topic to cover in
mm,
general. As a band, we don't have enough conversations around tax. But first things first is that we should never make the mistake of equating the swans to tax
mm,
because they're fundamentally different. Because the swan is
mm.
always voluntary. Like you're never going to have a gun put to your head and then made to pay the swan, right? Otherwise, it
Yeah,
invalidates it as the swan. Uh,
yeah, true.
tax is always enforced, right? The
Yeah,
the argument isn't whether or not tax is like unethical or whether or not
yeah,
it's theft. It is theft, right? It's
yeah,
fundamentally theft, right? It's state mandated theft. But the argument is, okay, well, how much do we tolerate in order for society to function, which is what you're sort of saying here. And it's a really good question. And this is why in the manifesto, although I write quite heavily against the concept of taxes and say, oh, it is theft, it's armed robbery, etc., I do still compromise with it because it's unrealistic then to just basically go overnight and say, okay, now we'll get rid of all taxes. Because as you're saying, people rely on these things, right? Like school
mm,
meals, disability benefits,
mm,
this kind of stuff, right? People are actually relying on the system.
yeah, 100%.
But the issue is, right, and you mentioned this at the start, like, okay, years ago, the healthcare was good, the school dinners were good, right? And now they're kind of like gone down the pan. And the reason for that is fundamentally this, right? If you're paid, regardless of performance, the incentive to perform lowers, right? Whereas if you're paid on the basis of your outcome, then the incentive to perform increases. So, like for example, like the reason why a lot of these government services get crapper over time is because they're paid regardless. Like if they give a good output or bad output, they're paid regardless because we're all taxed regardless. And if the government can't afford it with the taxpayers' money, they just print the money out and fund the thing. And in fact, the incentive is the other way. So especially with schools, public schools, if your school performs worse, you're more eligible for government funding because they say, oh, no, the school's doing bad, let's throw more money at it, right? But in a private kind of like in a free azaad system, what would happen is, okay, if you're doing bad, you'd get filtered out, right? And those resources are then freed up for somebody else, for another entrepreneur to come in and then attempt something else with the same resources at a better way. Or if you failed, and then that's some learning for you, and then you can go try it again with the new learnings. What's happened now is we're not allowed to learn from our mistakes because we're not allowed to suffer the consequences of our actions. The things like bailing out banks is a really good example because what banks should do, they should never be bailed out because they're gambling with people's money, taking stupid risks. And then when those risks don't pay out, the government can't come in with our money and say, oh, it's all right, here you go, here's some money to try it again. No, they should learn from the mistake. Otherwise, they're never going to like not stop repeating those mistakes, which is what we have again. We still have the same things that led up to the 2008 financial crisis. Those same things are going on, right? So it's like, well, these bubbles that keep getting bigger and bigger, that kind of stuff. It's because we're not, as a society, we're not allowing people to learn from their mistakes. But that being said, we don't want people to fail in such a way that's debilitating, right? If I started a business and it failed, that shouldn't mean that, okay, that's it, I'm going to starve to death now. There should be some sort of safety net. So again, this way, Azadism makes a compromise, and we say we should have a universal basic income. And you're paid this regardless of if you work or not. But it's not a lot, so you can like obviously live a luxurious life, but it's not so small that you won't starve to death, kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah.
And right, and the specific model we chose, right, was the negative income tax, right. And I talk about it again more in the manifesto and I give a diagram how it sort of works. But it's like the more you earn, the less kind of like benefit you get. But it's not. But the way the calculation works, that you're still better off for working. So like if you make 20 grand, then you'll get like 5 grand benefit or something like that. If you make 30 grand, and you'll get like 2 grand benefits, something like that. But you're still better off by getting the job because you're 32 grand rather than 30 grand kind of thing, right? Again, it makes more sense when you see it in a table, but like you have to manage it in such a way where, okay, you don't want the incentive to be where, okay, the benefits that you're getting are so high that people don't want to work, because by working you're actually worse off, right? You don't want to have that
Yeah.
situation arising.
Yeah.
Right. But so, yes, it's a bit of a tricky way to balance it. But again, azaadism does recognize you should have safety nets in society, but you shouldn't have governments paying for things, right? Let the people have the money, they're adults, and let them decide for themselves what choices to make with that kind of like money they get, right? If they want to spend it on, I don't know, like alcohol and whatever, and then drink themselves to death, okay, that's a free country for them. If that's what they want to do, let them do it, kind of thing, right? Or if people want to spend it on, okay, health insurance or educating the kids or food, whatever, then let them do that kind of thing. But we have to let people to kind of suffer the consequences of their decision making, because if we don't, you end up with a society of essentially immature people who are not suffering from their mistakes and therefore not learning from their mistakes. And if you don't learn from your mistakes, you'll never progress, you'll never innovate, you'll never be prosperous. So yeah, that's essentially my kind of position on taxes. I also believe in flat taxes. I don't agree with progressive taxes, because again, if you look at the incentives, why would you then start working harder if you're more and more of your money is going to be taken
Yeah,
away in tax?
no,
Right?
it's silly, man. 50%, and then you
Ridiculous.
got the inheritance tax, where
Yeah,
they've already paid the tax, and now the children have got to pay more tax with money that's already been taxed,
yeah.
bro. It's
Inheritance tax
it's
is the worst.
it is
It's the worst because
gunpowder
that.
robbery sometimes,
Yeah,
man. It's like, if my parents have already paid it, and then now when I get it, I have to pay them again, bro. That's taking the piss, bro.
yeah,
They
yeah.
probably taking the
It's
piss,
really bad.
but we got
It's really bad. It's
yeah,
grave
so
robbery. Yeah, inheritance
no.
tax is grave robbery.
So I'm
Yeah.
sure people still scratching their head about the Neo-Khalistanis.
Oh yeah,
So we're going to be the last question,
yeah,
because I
sure.
don't want to give information overload,
Yeah,
because we want to keep it bite-sized, because then people can absorb it and then
exactly.
you can watch the video again.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
it's just introducing it to these concepts. And bro, it's been really eye-opening for me, because I've read the page, but it's different for communicating with you and the
yeah,
reading the page and Insta.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
not,
yeah.
you get
For
the
sure.
vibe, you get the tone, you feel the person, and it's much more friendly and presentable, and you make a connection. So this is why I think it's a good shout by people that told me to get you on,
Yeah,
and it's really
yeah.
really good, man.
No, I
So
appreciate that.
explain the Neo Khalistani, bro, and
Yeah,
I'll
sure.
wrap it up.
Sure. So, Neo Khalistani, the term again, I sort of made up because I want to differentiate between genuine classic Khalistanis who have an actual genuine desire for Khalistana and genuine in that, right? Versus people who are just paying the lip service, right?
Mm.
Because there's a difference between saying you want Azadi and actually wanting Azadi. And the proof is in the pudding, right? So if somebody actually wants Khalistan, they'd put the effort in to do the vajad on the mechanics of it, right? Sit down and put the work in, do the effort, create that thick intelligentsia, that kind of stuff, right? So when I go to a lot of these guys and I say to them, look, I've got an idea of how it would run because you guys clearly do not. Let's work on it together, that sort of thing. And then in the return, when they start, first they ignore, and then they start doing India, and then they start to suppress the work, give you threats, all that kind of stuff. Then you're
Got
like, well,
it.
you guys you don't want Khalistan. You guys want
Mm.
your hierarchies, your own really like Bantic org hierarchies to continue. You actually don't care about Khalistan at all. All you care about is selling your Khalistan t-shirts. There's a very different to actual Khalistanis on the ground, like the things you see at universities. You have the actual passion for it, who feel the pain of like 1984, and then they want to actually do something about it. And then when they go to the Bantic orgs to do something, all they tell them to do is go on a protest or pay for them for their gender studies courses or something stupid like that. It's like there's a very world of difference between the neo-Khalistanis and the actual genuine Khalistanis. And this page, this project, is trying to attract the genuine Khalistanis and say, look, here's a space for you where we can come together, do the necessary vajad, and create the necessary groundwork for the next generation to establish not just a nation state, but maybe many nation states, maybe empires, maybe galactic empires, maybe in future, right? You got people like Elon Musk trying to colonize Mars. That should be us. That should be the Carter putting our agenda on the Mars first, right? That's the kind of like thinking and space it is for the real Khalistanis if they want to be here, or even people who are not a fan of the Khalistan idea but do want Khalsa Raj. This is the space. But for the neo Khalistanis, this is not the space. So I've offered it to them, and by virtue of them rejecting it, they've become a neo Khalistani by lip service, not actual action.
No, fantastic. So listening to all this talk and stuff, and it comes. You know what? I can conclude it, like me personally, in one sentence. They're really.
Yeah,
Yeah,
nice.
no, we've gone the long way, but if we just
Yeah,
start to talk, say, there, let's establish it.
that's it.
That's what I've picked up from it. Obviously, to establish there's a lot of groundwork and everything that has to go into it, like the gurus did. So
Mm,
basically, the end result is the fateh, really. For,
100%.
if you sum it up, Anna.
Yeah,
So so reality check, like this is wicked. You know, we have this talk and think I'm picturing images in my head of, you know, we're going serving people, we're saving people, we're going to Uganda, chopping up the people that chop up, you know, them
yeah,
tribal
yeah,
wars
yeah,
and so I'm picturing all this. By
yeah,
reality, bruv, man's are gonna wake up and go work and pay tax and come
yeah.
home, get shifted from their wife,
That's it.
and just go sleep and play PlayStation as escape, and then do the
Yeah,
repeat. Yeah. So in reality, we're very far off from
yeah,
this, yeah. But the dialogue started, and
yeah.
you know, this is what happened. We've had Casa Raj before. There's a Dora Raj, Krega Casa, Kirena Koi. So these,
Mm,
you know, despite Rama Singh's book, he said Casa Raj will come, and you know, we're doing well as a community, as in we all got nice lives, especially in the UK. I can't talk outside of the UK. The ones that have been established here, bro, man, they got 3-4 Gadiya in the drives, man. Some man's got
yeah,
different car colors for different bugs. No, everyone's got genuine. Everyone's wearing bloody
yeah.
£300 trainers, £500 jeans.
Mm,
You know, the people that have come over, like the freshies and that, they're not doing too great because they've come out in bad time. But I'll
sure.
guarantee you, in 20 years, they'll be doing good as well
Yeah,
because
yeah, yeah,
they got hard work ethics as well. You
yeah,
know,
yeah.
there's not, well, you know, we're not like other communities doing drug dealing, doing this, doing that. You,
Mm,
you have the odd people that do it have different circumstances,
yeah,
but as a community, we've got money, but we are civilians, yeah.
yeah,
And this is what I always say, like, you know, a lot of people do cosplay, this, that. We think we're warriors, but the jails ain't full of warriors or Sikh warriors that
yeah,
have
yeah, yeah.
done
No,
stuff
I'll
against.
tell you something now. It's like if you want to be a warrior and like actually like live the castle lifestyle and stuff, get yourselves your firearm licenses and go to the shooting range. Why do we have more things in nightclubs than gun clubs?
Yeah.
It's a very big issue, right? And even now, like me personally, I'm just gonna plug my sort of like side project, MissileNet. I'm selling courses in Poland, France, South Africa, Kenya to go and do PMC training, that kind of stuff, right? Close protection officer work, that kind of things. You want to learn actual modern tactics and firearms, get in touch. I'll put you towards some courses. And if not, Sings should start joining the military, especially young Sings who are considering careers. I regret not doing it now. But I highly encourage young Sings, if they want to start living the caste lifestyle, start joining the military, become law enforcement, that kind of stuff, gain the skills. So we can then start setting up our own private military corporations, private security firms, and start doing some of these missions the casters should be doing globally on our own terms. But we don't have the skills, don't have the competency yet. We've got to build it.
Oh, bro, the kids are getting bullied, man. The parents ain't even telling them to fight back.
Yeah,
They don't.
yeah,
They want.
yeah,
They're too scared to tell the kids the Mughals Shaheeds saw Sakis, bro. And
yeah,
I had a lot of Punjabi teachers saying the parents have complained when we're telling the stories of the Godwara have took them all down. So we're going backwards, man, instead of
yeah,
forwards. And but like there's a lot of work to be done. Someone asked a question: what was the response of our community when you talk about these topics? That's easily explainable. You're going to get negative, you're going to get
yeah,
positive. Some people be like, "Wow, wicked sing, that's great."
yeah,
Some people are like, "What are you on about, man? This and that." Like you said, innit?
yeah, yeah,
So we ain't had any more questions. If anyone's got any more questions, we'll take 1-2 questions now. If anybody's got any, but it's been a great talk, man. And
yeah.
what you can do as a civilian now, everybody's earning money. You can
Yeah,
give this one, help Jet Singh Trust. We can, you know, Punjab. We can do so much work here. Help, you know. I had an idea about, you know, jacket potato stands outside the Gurdwara. So if, you know, like the homeless people that stink
yeah,
of
yeah, yeah,
alcohol, but cigarette from them. You know, outside of the Gurdwara, you give them jacket potatoes, give them sandwiches, pasta, whatever. Have that on the
mm,
weekend only. Get involved. So we've got to take small steps. They're
100%,
yeah. So like you said,
100%.
like the feeding, we can do it, and we're doing it well. We've got MLS, we've got Sikh Soup, we've got so many people doing stuff. Every
Yeah, yeah,
Gurdwara can have a little stall outside, give kheer out, give stuff out.
mm,
But the hard side is the fighting side. Like, if forget doing Castle Raj taking over, let's just make sure everything is solid, everything doesn't get bullied, the kids are
yeah,
solid and don't get bullied.
that's
Let's
it.
not be victims first before helping anyone else out. You know,
Exactly,
like
exactly.
my mum will say, don't go and tidy up your that room, your mate's room. Pila apna rukam rasawar,
Yeah,
innit?
yeah,
Tidy
yeah.
up your room first, then go and tidy up your
Yeah,
mate's room.
it's
Makes
common
no
sense.
sense.
Yeah, yeah,
So let's not be victims first. Let's get solid. Let's get into the gyms. Let's get into the dojos. Let's learn Shastra Vidya, whatever it is. Let's
yeah,
eat healthy. Let's become a soldier. even if you don't work for the police or army, Guru Gobind Singh is our general. He's there, he's watching us right now. He's there. He's gonna be there forever. Become a soldier.
100%.
Even if you're not amateur, become a soldier. One is gonna be your health and fitness. Bro, I'm gonna get you back on. We're gonna do more topics and stuff, man. Because I like your vibe, friendly guy, genuine guy. So I'm definitely gonna get you on, and I don't wanna make this talk too long, but in a nutshell, thanks for coming on, bro. Respect for everyone for watching. I'm gonna leave this talk on, and we are definitely gonna get you on for more topics, man. Thanks for everyone that's watching. Respect, guys. Okay, right, Jakarta. Right. Okay.